Greetings sailors and welcome to a replay I've been sitting on for probably about 2 months at this point, and it is the first game in the Fletcher that I had where I actually got to use the defensive AA setup. Now with a Fletcher that means that you've got to get the second hull first, but although with the US destroyers generally you get the option of a defensive AA with one of the hull options from literally tier 5 upwards, it doesn't really become worth it until, say, tier 8. And then the Fletcher is the first one where you get the defensive AA option without losing a turret, crucially. Because all those other ships, you give up a turret to get extra AA power. And even then, it's a bit of a mixed bag. You're not necessarily getting that much extra AA power because, of course, your main battery guns are also dual-purpose guns. And if you're giving one of those up, you're also losing some AA. But as I said with the Fletcher, that's just not the case. So it makes it a really nice option for this ship. It's a bit of a specialised option because you're not going to see a destroyer. You're not going to see a carrier every game, of course. And so, as I say, this was the first one where I did actually see a carrier, and it took about 5 or 6 games. But I did finally get it, and as it turned out, well, it was going to be very, very useful in this game indeed. And fortunately, the carrier that's on my team cottons on quite quickly. Now, I did make the mistake of not actually saying anything in the chat at the start of the game, and I do generally make a habit of that, but I just completely didn't think to do it. And of course, even if you do, there's no guarantee that the carrier player will speak your language, so I've had plenty of rounds where I was playing the Fletcher with the AA setup, and it just didn't really, like I gave the information, but it didn't actually get me anywhere. But yeah, the pertinent stats here are anyway that I've got a 6 kilometer AA range and it's something like a 3.5 air detection range, so the planes can be well within your AA envelope even without using AFT, which you kind of don't want to use for an AA setup US destroyer because of course it's going to affect your main battery guns as well, and that's going to affect your surface detectability when you're firing, because there are going to be plenty of situations you find yourself in where being able to cloak up faster by just sailing away from the enemy and therefore getting out of gun range and therefore surface detection range will be a highly desirable thing to do, and I actually do get to do that once or twice in this game. So I've already partly wiped one wave of unsuspecting enemy planes, and of course the first defensive is always going to catch them unawares, but even without the defensive going, it's over 300 with the defensive on the outer envelope alone. It's like 350 DPS, but without it it's not nearly so good. But I do have manual AA because you really have to invest in a full AA spec captain minus the AFT, which, as I've said, is not actually that useful necessarily. So even when you don't have defensive AA going, your AA is still respectable when you control click on a plane. It's just not going to massively shred planes as much. And bear in mind, 6.14 was the patch where they upped the defensive AA power of destroyers particularly, because previously it was ×4 to your base AA power for guns over a certain caliber, and then it went to ×6. So it was a good time to play an AA Fletcher, basically, this patch. It was a very good time to get to this ship. So 16 plane kills before I've even done any damage, and I've basically been just trying to contest the middle, but I don't have a huge amount of backup, and if you'll look on the mini-map, this isn't looking particularly rosy at the moment. We have a lot of ships going to the ACAP, but the enemy team also have enough ships going there that, well, the enemy team's capping, our team isn't really in a position to block them from capping, and so that's just going to be a whole bunch of our ships, that's what, 2/3 of our team easily, that are just going to be stuck up there. And yeah, they'll be fighting the enemy team, but this is a domination game, so map control matters hugely. It's not just that you have ships fighting the enemy ships, it's that you also have to have control of at least 2/3 of the cap circles, ideally. So I've made use of the shimmer smoke, and that's given me enough time with the cooldown to get my own smoke going again. But this Montana's getting a bit close, and ideally I'd have some backup here. Ideally, I'd have somebody else that could shoot at this Montana, but I don't. And I think as of this replay, I still had the Benson torpedoes, which have a decent range, but they are slow. And so hitting things with torpedoes is a little bit harder, but once you get the upgraded torpedoes, they're very, very nice. And the Gearing's torps, again, represent an actual significant increase in torpedo power. In fact, the Gearing's torps are arguably better than the Shimikaze's torps, just in terms of usability. So I decide discretion is the better part of valor, and retreat in the face of that advancing Montana. And I was able to use the just the manual AA to shoot down that scout plane. And you know, even if you don't have the don't have an enemy carrier to use your defensives on, I've still found the defensive useful from time to time in shooting down spotting planes. Because even without AFT, 6 kilometers is still a fairly decent AA envelope. So a bit of repositioning, the Shimmer got spotted and taken out. Basically down on this end of the map now, it's me, the Missouri and the Carrier, and the Missouri and the Carrier are actually in a division. And they're in a clan that you might recognise, because they're related to the clan that just won the Kings of the Sea tournament, WGP2W. Oh, in this case it's WGP2L, which I'm going to guess is like a second clan or a training clan or a reserve clan or something like that. Because many of the clans, you know, they have multiple chapters, if we can put it that way. And that's true for world attacks, and it's especially true for warships, just because the clan sizes are so inherently small. You start off with 30 spots for a clan, as I'm sure you're probably aware, and the maximum possible size you can have is 50. So, you know, the only real reason I can think that Wargaming has done that is to force people to spend more gold setting up more clans, but maybe I'm just being cynical. So, first torpedo hit, and I don't get the flooding damage on that, or at least not very much, but that has, you know, weakened the Montana a bit, so the Missouri is now tackling him, having tackled the other battleship that he was dealing with, and we'll at least have this end of the map secure. And it's at this point I decided, right, I'm going to take another punt at capping B, now that there's only one enemy destroyer left. Of course, planes are still a concern. I know there's a Neptune that was around here somewhere, and that's definitely a concern. The semi-armour piercing of the British cruisers is a significant threat when you're in a destroyer, because it tends to, like the shorter fuse time tends to result in lots and lots of full penetrations, which can wreck you really quickly. Yeah, the most immediate problem right now is I'm being spotted by some bombers, and this was more me just using it to get these planes out of my way rather than I wanted to really kill these planes to help out the carrier. But I have still been helping out the carrier, you know, that defensive AA also nobbled that fighter group he was fighting. So the enemy Essex, it seems like they're starting to run low on fighters, if nothing else. So that's going to make our Taiho job a little bit easier. So I was briefly spotted. Of course, the Neptune knows where I was, but I've gotten the cap without getting reset at least. And the Neptune is taking a bit of attention from our Missouri, who's pushing up on this side, although they will be taking some attention from them shortly. We've also got a Conqueror that's left alive, retreating out of the mess that was the A cap. And we are still really quite down on points, but we're not so bad off as we were before. There's a chance we can still win this, and we've really narrowed the gap in terms of the numbers of ships in play. So, although the strategic positioning was fairly terrible, that big blob of ships we had up near the A-cap at least did kill some things while they were up there. Although not that many things, all things considered. They certainly could have been more effective. So there goes the Neptune, but there's the Benson as well, which is, actually that's quite nice. If we can take them out, that's good timing. And with the Neptune gone, they've lost their immediate backup. The two remaining enemy battleships aren't really in a particularly good position to support this guy. So yeah, if we can keep him going, if we can keep him under pressure, in fact we can take him out, that's going to be extremely useful. And there we go, there's the Missouri radar. So I was slightly leery that the Benson might have torped into my smoke, but it looks like he's put his torps out against the Missouri instead. And with the radar going, and that's the radar with the radar mod, almost certainly, this guy is now toast. And if I can get the kill, that'll be nice, but my shooting is a little bit skew-if here. But shooting at anything other than extremely close range with the US destroyer, well, the US destroyers are fairly infamous for their shell travel time, which is another one of the reasons why you maybe don't necessarily want to have AFT, because in a lot of situations it's not really going to be useful, because by the time your shells get across the extra distance, yeah. So, you know, no AFT, and in fact I think I didn't even have the upgraded range module. I think this is the stock range. So, yeah, this isn't even as good as it could be just without any captain skills or any extra equipment on the ship. Don't know why I was having difficulty with the camera there, though. So the last two enemy ships are trying to push in here. It's a pair of enemy conquerors, and it would be kind of bad to get hit by either of them, so I'm thinking about, you know, starting to withdraw, get to a bit of cover, but here come the planes again. And this is just bad from the perspective of, well, I don't have any defensives left, because BFT is basically a bit more important than Superintendent if you're going for this kind of build, because you really do want the extra DPS, and especially when you're using your defensive AA, the extra DPS is quite significant. But that has the downside of you've only got the 3 defensives and you've only got the 3 smokes, so you have to kind of use them quite sparingly. So I've got my torps out. I don't think they're going to get there in time, though. The carrier is, there we go, is about to kill one of the conquerors. The other one's quite healthy, and I'm actually having, you know, taken minimal damage from the drop. In fact, 0 damage, but some criticals. I've had to use my damage control party. I put my second lot out, and it looks like maybe I will catch the Conqueror on the nose, but no, these aren't the faster upgraded torps, so he's got plenty of time to dodge around them. And because I've just been popping away here, yeah, I've at this point stopped firing on the basis of I don't want to get shot by the Conqueror, but of course there's that cooldown period where you're still spotted, and even though I'm just unspotted, oh yeah, that hurt. That definitely hurt. Okay, well, never mind. Fortunately, it was while my damage control was once again available, so it could have been worse. So I've waited a little bit until he's engaging the Missouri, and there's no more planes overhead. And this is me just basically taking advantage of the fact that his turrets are pointing the other way, and he can't easily bring his guns to bear. And if he tries to, I can just stop firing and stealth up again, and that distraction has bought our Missouri a little bit of breathing room. So damage-wise, this has not been a spectacular game. It absolutely has not. But sometimes damage isn't everything, and particularly in World of Warships, it's definitely not all about the damage, because as I point out every so often, it's not the absolute damage number that you've done, it's the percentage of an enemy ship's health that you've taken off that matters in terms of the actual scoring. But also, you know, there are plenty of other things that you can do that are valuable in terms of XP and credits that, you know, also help out the team. And as it is, I've gotten 5 cap defense flags, I've gotten 1 cap, and I've got those 32 plane kills. So the absolute damage number is not that impressive. 72k is kind of on the mediocre side, although considering I was using the stock torpedoes, maybe a little bit understandable. But yeah, it's going to be better than you would think for 72k, we'll put it that way. So we've just basically had time to spot the carrier, the enemy Essex, who was the lone survivor, and now our Missouri, I think, got a little bit more damage. Our Tycho got a little bit more damage out of him, but you know, they did manage to survive. But as we can see from the end score screen, well, yeah, 14,000 XP with all the flags and everything, and that was from a base of 2,300. But as you can see, it was the Missouri that by far did the best there, 2,900. So it really was the team in the south that ended up saving this game, and us taking and holding that cap, and then being able to eventually take the middle and deal with the survivors of the enemy team. You know, it was a team effort, this one. It absolutely was a team effort. It's not like the team in the north did nothing. It's just in terms of it being a domination game, that big blob of ships, that, you know, 3/4 of our team that was doing nothing in terms of actually helping our map control, it was a hindrance more than a help, but, you know, they did still do some damage, they did still manage some kills. So, that was my first real outing in the AA Fletcher, but I've had many enjoyable games in it since, and in fact, I'm at the gearing now. You know, it really didn't take me long to get through the Fletcher to the gearing. It's one of the quickest high-tier grinds I've had. And of course, that's helped in Warships by the fact that you can selectively place on, you know, you saw the rather eye-catching camo in that one. You know, that's one of the camos that gives you bonus XP. I had the various XP flags to speed things along. And that's one of the things I really like about Warships, is you can stack the camos and signals in a way that you can't do in World of Tanks. You do have personal reserves in World of Tanks that give you extra XP or crew XP or credits or whatever, but those are based on blocks of time. You know, you set it going and bam, there you go, next 2 hours you get X amount of bonus XP, whereas with Warships you can go, right, okay, I'm going to stack the flags, I'm going to just get the daily on this ship, and it gives you a heck of a lot more flexibility rather than just these concrete 2 hour blocks of time, because you can try and, you know, say I'm going to get the daily on this every day and I'm going to use a booster to do it, but then, you know, you've got the extra hour and 45 minutes ticking away after that, so it kind of ties you down in a way that World of Warships doesn't. So there's the Fletcher, a very enjoyable ship. The gearing the gearing with the same setup, funnily enough, doesn't actually have as much AA power. The Fletcher is the peak of the line in that regard, so I am definitely hanging on to it. But still, you know, if I have a really good gearing game, you will definitely expect to see that sooner rather than later as well. So hopefully you've enjoyed this replay, and if you have, you can hit the like button, you can leave any comments below, you can sub to my channel if you haven't already, and as always, stay tuned for more.